So, right, so I'll be facilitating the session this morning. So I'm Julia Hamilton-Box. I'm going to be assisted by Bev from the Health and Wellbeing Support Service. She'll be helping monitor the chat for me. So I'm a qualified psychological wellbeing practitioner. So that means that I assessed and treated people with mental health problems like anxiety and depression. I'm a graduate management trainee, so I'm on the NHS graduate scheme, currently working in the health and wellbeing department at the ICB. So I'm here today to share information on low mood or depression and guide you through some coping strategies. So what's really important is that this workshop isn't just for those people currently experiencing low mood. It might be that you just want to learn a bit more about it so you can help support colleagues better, or friends or loved ones. We never know when any of us will be experiencing this at any point in our lives. So it's really useful to kind of be equipped with these tools for ourselves and for other people. So just a bit of housekeeping before we get going. So please do try and get as comfortable as possible. No problem if you need to pop off to go to the loo or anything like that. You might want pad and paper with you. Sorry, pad and paper and pen with you to jot down any notes. It will last about 45 minutes this morning. Obviously, what we're going to be discussing today is of a sensitive nature. So please only share information that you do feel comfortable talking about. And please, after the session today, don't talk about what other colleagues may have shared during the session. So we can make sure that it's a safe space today. So, oh, and just the other thing to say is if you're, I think everyone is on mute, but just please stay on mute unless you do want to chip in at any point when we get to some questions. So, in terms of what we'll be covering this morning, firstly, just to look at what are the indicators of low mood. So, how might low mood affect someone? What exactly low mood is? What are the symptoms? And then we'll be looking at cognitive behaviour therapy and what that is and how that can help manage low mood. So what can you start to do differently to help yourself cope and manage, or that might be for someone else as well, as I've said. How you can start to break the cycle of low mood. And then we'll be focusing on our behaviours, what we can do differently, and then our thinking styles and how we can maybe challenge some of our unhelpful thoughts. So, as I've said, please don't contribute anything you don't want to share or that would cause you any distress. It's a psychoeducational workshop, so it's more about information sharing today. So please don't feel as if you have to say anything you don't want to say or don't feel comfortable sharing. And if you are struggling with low mood, please do seek support. So there's a number of different avenues you can seek support from, some of which are listed here. So reach out further for further support from the Health and Wellbeing Support Service, more directly your trust or your place of work, the Health and Wellbeing support options. You've got wellbeing champions and mental health first aiders you can go to. You can speak to your GP or you can self-refer to iTalk. And then I've put a couple of helplines there as well, like Samaritans or Mental Health Matters, which 24-hour a day helplines you can always call if you need to speak to someone. Okay, so these sessions have been developed using cognitive behaviour therapy or CBT, so using techniques based on that, with also practical advice and guidance. And they aim to offer support with practical and achievable tips for wellbeing and increasing positive mood. So how might low mood affect someone? Does anyone have any ideas of what some of the indicators of low mood might be? Please feel free to kind of put something in the chat, or if you do want to take yourself off mute, please do.
Kind of a sense of, I don't know, it kind of sneaks up on you and you don't know. It's almost like you don't realize it's happening to you, and then you just notice that you feel different. You feel like it's hard. It's a bit of a struggle, I suppose. Like even just day-to-day activities. Well, that's how it's been affecting me kind of recently.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Nick, for sharing. Yeah, absolutely. It can definitely just, we don't necessarily notice it coming, and then you might suddenly realise that actually things are just getting a bit harder just to doing your normal things. Thanks. Thank you. Bev, I can see, I think we've got a few things coming up in the chat. Do you mind reading some of those out?
Yeah, we've got withdrawing, less tolerance, changing sleeping or eating habits.
Yeah.
Loss of energy, trouble sleeping, changing eating patterns, eating, loneliness, helplessness, poor sleep, mood swings, overwhelmed, not good enough, self-doubt, irritability, stops the engaging in activities and meeting people they used to enjoy, and not interested in normal things we like to do.
Thank you. Yeah, all really, really good points people have raised, and yeah, covered lots there. So yeah, that irritability is a really big one. So and notice a number of people have said changing appetite. Yeah, so let's have a look.
Yeah, sleeping.
Yeah. So absolutely. I think you've pretty much covered all of the ones I've got listed on the screen. So mood becomes more depressed or irritable. Motivation, so that often decreases, or we can become quite agitated. And we can see our activity levels change, kind of a bit like Nick was saying. Everything can feel a bit more of a struggle. Some people might try to be keeping busy as a distraction, but usually you see that reduction in activity levels. Our coping strategies change, so might start engaging in unhelpful coping strategies. That might be, you know, as people have said, withdrawing, shutting yourself away from the world. So not speaking to your friends as much as you usually would, maybe just spending loads of time gaming, or just staying in bed, or anything like that. Our thought patterns become more negative, and we can worry more. We can kind of get caught in this spiral where we ruminate. And then also some people have pointed out physical body sensations can become more noticeable, might feel distressing. Our sleeping patterns change. We might be sleeping much more than usual, or actually less, struggling to get to sleep. And appetite changes. So either overeating, which can be kind of this form of comfort eating, try and make yourself feel better, or eating less than usual and kind of losing that appetite. So as you can see, it's for most things it can go both directions, more or less, but it's that kind of change. And we can actually split the kind of symptoms up into 3 key categories. So you've got behavioural symptoms, so changing what you're doing. So as a lot of people have said already, avoiding going out, maybe you stop answering the phone or your messages, not opening your post, making excuses and escaping situations, and cancelling plans just in case or at the last moment, sleeping more as a form of escapism, and neglecting responsibilities. So that's all things we change.
Someone's put self-sabotage.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you're doing all of these things with these kind of behavioural symptoms, that can really be a form of self-sabotage. And often people might, you know, you might be aware you're doing it, but you can't necessarily seem to stop, which can be really distressing. Other symptoms are physical symptoms. So with how we speak, you might notice a difference. So you might be moving or speaking more slowly than usual. As we've said, changes in appetite or weight. You might experience constipation. You might have unexplained aches and pains over your body. Really, a very common one is this lack of energy. You might see a decrease in your sex drive, changes to your menstrual cycle, and disturbed sleep. And lastly, the last thing we see is cognitive symptoms. So having all sorts of kind of negative, gloomy thoughts, like I'm useless at dealing with things, or actually I'm plain old useless, I'm not normal, I'm not coping, all of these sorts of thoughts which can be really distressing and make us feel really bad about ourselves. And actually it's this perspective thing. Actually, maybe things are just difficult at that time, but we can't see that. It's a bit like having kind of blinkers on a horse. So you're just thinking all of those negative thoughts and you can't actually open up a little bit. That's often what it can feel like. So those are the symptoms. And then what happens, we can get caught in this vicious cycle. So there might be an initial trigger. Sometimes we don't notice that, so this appears to be no trigger, but other times it's more noticeable. So it might be the end of a relationship, or we're struggling with loneliness, or we have a bereavement, for instance, or there's something difficult going on at work. That might be the initial trigger. And this causes us to experience negative, gloomy, and self-critical thoughts. Like we've just seen, for instance, there's no point, I've messed up again, no one likes me. And we find these thoughts really hard to disregard. So this leads us, as you can see, there's links between all of these three areas. So it leads us to feel quite depressed and hopeless, and lack energy and have no interest in things. We kind of slow down. So this kind of encompasses both physical feelings and emotional feelings. So these feelings cause us to then change our behaviours. So we often withdraw and isolate and neglect our responsibilities. This really makes sense. It's usually when we're tired and we rest, that makes us feel better. And then we go out and we have more energy, we can, we recover. However, in the case of depression, this only helps in the short term. It helps in the short term because we maybe cancel our plans, we feel relieved because we don't have to do that, and we feel we can rest. So we get that short-term relief. But in the long term, as we're not exposing ourselves to these activities which could bring us a sense of achievement or pleasure, actually it feeds into this vicious cycle. We actually feel worse because we're not doing anything. We have more negative thoughts, and which makes us feel worse. We can get stuck in this cycle, which can feel really hard to break out from. And because we've often isolated ourselves at this stage, it can feel really hard to make that first step to go and seek further support and reach out. So that's kind of how we can get stuck. And at this point we often don't know which direction to turn or how we can help ourselves. So just before we go on to look at cognitive behaviour therapy and how that might be able to help, just to check, does anyone have any questions at this stage? Or happy to continue? Yeah, okay, let's go on then. So how can CBT help? So essentially, CBT, or cognitive behaviour therapy, is what it says there. So what you think, so your cognitions, and what you do, so your behaviours, affects how you feel. So it's really hard to directly change our feelings. We don't have control over that, but we do have more control over our thoughts, and even more so our behaviours. So in CBT, we look at challenging some of our thoughts and adjusting some of our behaviours to have a knock-on effect for how we're feeling. So unlike other therapies, it really has a focus on the here and now. So it's not looking at how this started, how you what triggered low mood, and looking back, it's focusing on the moment, what you're struggling with, and what can we do now to help you feel a bit better and help to ease those symptoms. So it aims to improve your current situation by developing various coping strategies. As I've said, it does this by challenging your unhelpful thoughts and behaviours. Requires active participation. So it's one thing learning about all of these techniques, but that is only the very first stage. Knowing about what's going to help won't make any difference in itself. And the really important thing is actually picking out, it might just be 1 or 2 different techniques. Not everything works for everyone, but picking some things out to try. And that's the bit that will make the difference. Okay. So interrupting the vicious cycle. So as I've said, the thoughts and the behaviours are really where we have a bit more ability to make a difference. So with our thoughts, we all have between 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, including words, images, or memories. These thoughts can be automatic, and we're not always aware of our thoughts. And we tend to take them at face value, even though they're not always helpful. And even when we're unaware of our thoughts, they have a big impact on what we choose to do and how we feel, as we can see in this cycle. So thoughts can be neutral, happy, or distressing. So some thoughts can lead you to feel bad and unmotivated, and others can lead you to feel good and motivated. And actually 80% of everyone's thoughts are negative. But when we're well and we're not struggling with low mood or depression, we find it much easier to disregard those negative thoughts. So what we want to do is start to challenge these negative thoughts to create a more balanced and realistic perspective, as well as start to notice some of the positives. As I said, it's a bit like removing the blinkers from a horse. So you're not just seeing the negatives. The other area we can interrupt this cycle is through the behaviours. So as I've said, usually when we're tired, resting can make us feel better. But when we're in a low mood, resting and withdrawing won't make us feel better and help us to recover. So instead, what we want to do is gradually increase our activity levels to start to actually expose ourselves to some things where we might get a sense of achievement, and that starts to make us feel a bit better and has a knock-on effect of our feelings. And actually, people often think, well, I just don't feel motivated, so I can't do it. But actually, motivation comes afterwards. When you're depressed, it's very unlikely you will suddenly feel motivated. So there's no point waiting for the motivation to come. And so this might be new activities or old activities you've kind of let go of. And what we really want to do is introduce activities gradually so that it's sustainable. And I've just put here, apply 5-minute rule. So this is the idea. Sometimes it can be really daunting to do an activity, and that can stop us from doing it at all. So we procrastinate and we don't engage in it. So the 5-minute rule can be really helpful in helping us overcome that. So if you think, well, I really should go for a walk, but I can't face it, just say, I'm just going to go out for 5 minutes, actually. If after 5 minutes, or whatever the activity is, I don't feel like carrying on, I don't have to, I can stop. We find that to be a really helpful way of just breaking it down so it's more manageable. So as you start to challenge some of your thoughts or adjust some of your behaviours, this has a knock-on effect of how you feel. So thinking and behaving differently means our mood lifts and our energy increases. So if we do interrupt this cycle, we can start to reverse this vicious cycle. So with increased activity levels, so if you're doing more of what you do, enjoy and need to do, you're achieving more, and that can lead you to feel more hopeful. That improves your mood, that gives you greater energy and motivation, and then you could do a bit more. So it becomes a kind of a new cycle, which is much more positive. Okay, so as I've said, as we've kind of looked at, low mood can have a significant impact on our behaviour. And with low mood, our daily routines often change, either through withdrawal, avoidance, difficulties concentrating, or engagement in unhelpful strategies. So when we experience low mood, a lack of motivational energy can result in a loss of activity and neglect of various tasks and responsibilities. So this loss of routine can be problematic. So when we feel depressed, we act in a way we call inside out. So when we're acting according to how we're feeling internally, so we're feeling down, we're feeling hopeless, so therefore we don't do anything. Activity scheduling is a tool we can use to turn that on its head. So which can help us to break into this vicious cycle with the avoidance. So what we're doing with activity scheduling is acting towards a goal and a plan. So that's called acting outside in. So you're acting according to this plan you've created, regardless of how you're feeling. You have to do the task anyway. And that, by doing that, that can start to improve how you're feeling internally. This can be very difficult. So, I'm not saying this is easy by any means, but we do find it's actually easier to act our way out of depression than to think our way out of depression. So behaviours can be the easier element to tap into rather than thoughts, especially as a starting point. Because it can be quite challenging to challenge some of those negative thoughts sometimes. So tapping into the avoidance is sometimes a bit easier. So by getting more active or engaging in more activities in a gradual step-by-step way, you can improve your mood and sense of well-being. It also means you have less time to fill, perhaps by thinking of all the things that are upsetting you and ruminating on things. You're not just sitting with your thoughts so much. So evidence shows that in order to have a healthy balance of mood, we need to have a mixture of 3 different types of activities. So we need pleasurable activities, routine activities, and necessary activities. So the benefits of activity scheduling: it allows you to identify any outstanding tasks or responsibilities and plan these in, but in a realistic and achievable way. So we'll go through the steps on the next slide, but it's really important how you start planning these in to make sure it is realistic. It makes you feel a sense of achievement by completing these activities, pleasure and enjoyment. It gives your mind something else to think about, as I've just said, rather than focusing on how you're feeling or what you're worrying about. It can improve your energy levels, so it improves your motivation and helps you feel less lethargic. A better routine can improve sleeping patterns, especially if you plan in a bedtime and morning routine. And it can help you think differently and allow you to focus on what you value in life. So how do you actually go about doing it? So actually, before we go into the steps, just way of thinking about how we can start simply. So it's not easy, as I've said, it's not easy to get started. What can be really good is to make a small list of steps and break each task down into more manageable chunks. So often we can think, well, I haven't been doing anything for a while. Haven't been cleaning the house. So first thing I need to do is clean the house. Well, that's actually a huge task, cleaning the whole house. So actually, how can I make that more manageable? What's more realistic for me to achieve? So breaking that down into do the washing up, put dirty clothes in the washing basket, clean the shower, whatever. And you can break these down as much as you need. It might just be, I need to go and buy the bleach to help me clean the toilet. It might be breaking it down to that degree. After all, if you've been feeling like this for a while, it might take time to adjust. So if you think about, running a marathon, you're not going to go straight in for the marathon, are you? You've got to do a lot of training to get there. And a really common pitfall is planning too much too soon. So doing it gradually is really important. So if you think of what you're doing now as your scaffolding to build upon or adjust, so just put the building blocks in. We really want to avoid something called boom and bust. So often what can happen to people is it's been a while since you last felt good. So actually you think, okay, I'm going to do this. you plan in loads of activities, and you might well achieve them. It's not to say you won't get them all done, but you do all of that, and then you feel utterly exhausted, drained, and then you can't do anything for the next few days, and you end up feeling really guilty, and quite bad about yourself. And then a few days later, you repeat the same cycle. So you're always going on this kind of highs and lows. So you want to avoid that and make it more sustainable. So really gradually increase things. So firstly, first step is to think of the activities. So write down some of the activities you used to do or may have been avoiding recently, or it might be you want to come up with some new activities. And then we want to make sure we've got a mix of all 3 different types of activities. So you've got your routine activities. So these are part of everyday activities, everyday life. So that might be preparing food, housework, washing, things like that. And then you've got to make sure you're listing some pleasurable activities, so things that when you do, they bring you kind of pleasure or enjoyment. And then list some necessary activities. So these are the things that the longer you leave them, the worse the negative consequences. So for instance, that might be meeting deadlines at work or paying your bills. So making sure all of those are listed as well. And then to avoid that boom and bust, we want to then put them into a hierarchy from easiest, medium difficulty to hardest. And then the last step is to plan these in. So what you do, making sure you've got a mix of all 3 different types of activities at each level in that hierarchy. You start with the easiest category and you plan some of those in for the week, kind of thinking about what is manageable for you, what can you feasibly do, what do you actually have time and opportunity to do. Important thing to remember at this stage, although we want to start with the easiest categories, sometimes the necessary activities might be in the hardest ones, but they might need to be planned in an earlier stage. So if you've got one necessary activity, like you've got an important deadline at work, for instance, just bear in mind, okay, I've got one really hard thing in there, so maybe I'm just going to make sure I've just got a couple of other easy things in there. So making sure it's manageable. And making sure that when you do that, you do have a mix of all 3 different types of activities. So often when we're struggling with a low mood, one of the hardest things can be thinking of the pleasurable activities, because actually it's been so long since you've felt that enjoyment or that joy, and you don't know where to start. So it might be useful now just have a think as a group, maybe put some ideas in the chat of what sorts of pleasurable activities you might like to think of. I mean, just to get the ball rolling, for me it would be, I enjoy going to Pilates, I like going for a walk in nature, I sing in a choir. So those are my kind of 3 things. Things coming up in the chat. Oh, Bev, you're
going for a walk.
Yeah.
Shopping. Going for walks come up a couple of times. Meeting friends. I struggle to think of ones I can fit into my daily life. The first one I introduced, reading and going for walks. Reading again. Gardening always lifts my mood, and I always do more than I thought I would. Baths. Just started couch to 5K. Brilliant. Drawing. Walking the dogs. Use Duolingo to learn Italian. Colouring, knitting, beach.
Great, there's some brilliant suggestions there.
Yeah, play the guitar.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Yeah, so loads of suggestions. And I'm just picking up on that point where someone said it's difficult sometimes to find things fit into their everyday life. So absolutely, I completely understand. And I think that's why it's really important to think about, well, what works for me? How long do I have? Do I have 5 minutes? Do I have 10 minutes? What can I do in that time? And because often when we're stressed as well, the first thing we drop is those pleasure activities. because we just feel like, well, we don't have time for that. But as I've said, like that balance of activities is really crucial. So it's just finding what works for you, and it can take a bit of time to work out. Yeah.
I think it's noticeable that we listed more symptoms of depression than we have pleasurable activities.
Yeah. Nick, do you want to come in there?
Thanks, Julia. I've had like anxiety. I noticed that I started to get anxiety and depression like a few weeks ago, and like that really resonates to me. Is that like it's really hard to take that first step, and part of the reason I'm feeling like I've been feeling is because of feeling overwhelmed with work, which I think is quite common at the moment because all the pressures on the system and stuff.
Yeah.
And I've made myself go for a walk every day. So like even no matter how worried I am about work, or if I haven't really got time, I put the time in, and I've gone in the middle of the day outside, but hopefully it's sunny then as well, which I think will benefit.
Yeah.
But it was really, really hard at first. But because I stuck to it, now I actually feel better, because I didn't want to go back to the doctors and take antidepressants, because I've done that before, like 3 times in my life. And I was really wanted to just try to control it through other means, if you see what I mean. Not there's anything wrong with taking antidepressants, because I know they do work. But yeah, I think I'd encourage anyone who's on this call who feels down, low in mood, anxious, to carve out some time if they can for themselves. It's really important. It does work. It was really hard at first, but now I'm about 5 weeks, 6 weeks in, I can really notice the difference. So I'm with people that are feeling like it's even that first step's too much. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Nick, for sharing that. And it's a brilliant example of that acting outside in. You know, you actually sometimes you feel like, I don't have time, I've got loads of work on, I don't really feel like going for the walk possibly, but actually you kind of made that commitment that you were going to do that every day. That's actually something I do as well. You know, if it's just 10 minutes at lunch, I just try and get out and get a bit of fresh air, because you know, it's really, you know, this time of year is really difficult with when it's dark early, and you don't really get any daylight otherwise. And that we know that obviously vitamin D is really important for our mood as well. So yeah, getting outside, there's so much evidence to support being out in nature and that fresh air. Okay, so yeah, we've had some good suggestions. I've got a few here because, as you know, often it is really difficult to come up with those ideas sometimes. So can be, it's not all of these I'd say necessarily just fit into the category of pleasurable activities. Some of them you might think is more routine or necessary, like maybe shopping for groceries, but can be a useful starting place sometimes. So things like around animals. So we know that if you're a dog person or a cat person, you know, actually stroking your pet and cuddling that actually releases oxytocin, the love hormone, which can make us feel better. So spending time with animals is a really good one. Cooking, a lot of people quite enjoy cooking or baking, and that can be quite a social thing as well in some instances. And obviously we all have to eat, so it might be, you know, a way of finding some, if that is something you enjoy. Not everyone enjoys it, but that might be a way of introducing something. So doing some things for your mind. So it might be for some people playing or meditating, practicing yoga or doing relaxation exercises, taking a bit of time just to take a bath, or kind of do your nails or something like that, go for a massage, being active. So obviously exercise is really good for boosting our mood as well. Being creative. So it might be painting or drawing. Oh, I just saw that chat, a comment in the chat about your dog, Helen. Music, I think someone suggested playing, Nick, you said about playing the guitar. But it might just be listening to music. It might be something you do if you do you go into the office, or into work, on your journey, you might be listening to music. So that might be a way of, if you don't feel as if you've got much time, putting something on in those few minutes you do have to yourself and making that a bit of time for yourself. Shopping, cleaning. So might not be the most fun activity for people, but sometimes it can be cathartic. Kindness, so doing something for other people, that can make you feel quite good. So expression, so actually feeling how you feel, maybe putting on some comedy, or sometimes actually even watching things that are quite sad can be quite cathartic sometimes, allow you to kind of sit in those feelings. Traveling, trying something new, lots of things around nature, and then connecting with people. So I think some suggested going for lunch, or going for coffee. It might be you've got one of your meetings, you could actually suggest, oh, should we get a coffee and have the meeting over coffee instead, or go for a walk during the meeting. Things like that can be quite good if you can. Writing, watching things, reading. So lots of different suggestions there, and you can just always Google things if you're kind of stuck for what can I do on a kind of rainy day if it's quite miserable, and lots of things often come up. Just about picking some things that work for you. So it's the 1st of February today. So Action for Happiness always release these calendars for each month. And they could be quite good actually, because they just set one thing for every day, and that might be sometimes can be quite good for inspiration. So today, send a message to let someone know you're thinking of them. So that's a really small thing, only takes a really short amount of time, but quite a nice thing to do. And obviously if you're on the receiving end of that, very nice to receive. Ask a friend how they've been feeling. Do an act of kindness. Invite a friend over for tea break. So it's got lots of suggestions there. I've just seen Bev, someone in the chat. What was?
Yeah, we've got before someone says going to the gym because you can listen to music and meet people as well.
Yeah.
Nick saying he loves cleaning, and sometimes you can download the calendar items onto Outlook now, so you get a reminder of something positive along with the usual meetings.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Okay,
Yeah.
someone's put it there.
Oh,
someone's put
fantastic.
it in the chat.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really good that you can do that. I wasn't aware. But yeah, that's a nice little reminder, especially if it pops up a bit different to your usual kind of meeting reminders you get on Outlook. So that's quite nice. And another thing that you might like to try planning in is a bit of mindfulness. That only has to take a couple of minutes, and that can actually be quite a good way. So I thought actually at this point of the workshop, it might be quite nice for us just to take a couple of minutes just to engage in some mindfulness. So feel free to turn your camera off. You don't want to be on screen, but it just introduces it at the beginning as well.
So often we're caught up in life's demands with no time to stop, but becoming more aware of your own thoughts and feelings and what's around you, and accepting the present moment can help improve your mental health and well-being. Doing this affects both the mental and the physical you. Some people call this being more mindful. Focusing on the present means paying attention to your thoughts and feelings right here, right now. Breathing exercises are a great way to focus on the present and be more mindful. Doing this can also help when you're feeling stressed or anxious. This short video will take you through how to do a mindful breathing exercise. Firstly, settle into a natural, comfortable position. When you're ready, take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Breathe naturally, noticing the sensations of the breath entering and leaving the body as best you can. Allow your shoulders and neck to relax, focusing on your breathing, just being aware of it. Focus on how your body feels. What sensations do you notice? Do you feel your feet on the floor or the feeling of your clothes on your skin? Take this time to pay close attention to physical sensations, from the top of your head right down to your toes. Notice what you're thinking about right now and how you're feeling. Just take the time to notice your thoughts and feelings without judgment and without trying to change them. When you're ready, take one more breath and try to bring this awareness with you into the next moments of your day. Breathing techniques like this one can help to center you in the moment at any time and connect you with the present, which can help if you're feeling stressed or anxious.
Do you think?
Okay. So mindful breathing, as I said, that could be a really good activity just to plan in. There's so many resources out there on YouTube. There's some on the NHS website as well, if you want to listen to some mindfulness. And I know many people have Spotify accounts. With Spotify, you actually get free access to Headspace, which has loads of different mindfulness video, audio things on there. So that might be something you like to think, actually, just when I get into bed, maybe, or when I wake up for 5 minutes by myself before I get out of bed and I tackle the world, I'll just have a few minutes with myself doing that. So some top tips when you're planning activities, what can be really useful is, instead of saying, for instance, if you want to do some more reading, instead of saying, I'm going to read a whole chapter, actually say to yourself, well, I'm actually going to do 10 minutes of reading or 20 minutes of reading. Having that time limit rather than a set amount to achieve can really help. Then obviously, if you do want to do longer, then you can, but it can make it more approachable. Remember that action is the first step, not motivation. The motivation won't come first. It's really that acting according to a plan rather than according to how you feel. And the motivation will come later. If you're struggling to get going, trying applying that 5-minute rule to each task. And what I really recommend doing is, alongside each activity, maybe rate your mood out of 10 before you start and afterwards, on a scale of 0 to 10. So 0 is the worst you've ever felt and 10 is the best you've ever felt. And actually, over time, you can see, well, actually, this activity really makes you feel better. And this other thing that I thought I really would enjoy, actually, I'm not feeling much better from doing that. So actually, then you can see what actually works best for you. But do remember, it is a gradual thing. You're not going to suddenly feel amazing from doing it. But it over time, it gradually builds. So I'm conscious of time. We don't have a lot of time left, but just have a look at our thought patterns as well before we finish. So often, as we said, with the low mood, you can have quite critical thoughts, thinking you're just totally useless, instead actually having kinder thoughts. So it's not actually that bad. You might not be good at that, but you'll do lots of things well as well. And the good thing, I quite like this unicorn, where it says, actually, if you had a thought you were a unicorn, would you believe it? Well, maybe, Helen, but probably not. You're probably going to realize, actually, no, I'm not a unicorn. So then when you have a thought that you're ugly or stupid or useless or whatever thought it might be, why do you believe that? Why do you think that's true? Because actually, that just goes to show that the thoughts aren't real. They're not facts, even though we often think they are. So when I'm experiencing depression, we often have a lot of unhelpful self-statements and thoughts. We call these unhelpful thinking styles. As I've said, often we get into a habit of using these unhelpful thinking styles, and they become automatic. And we're often really unaware of how we're thinking. And when you're consistently using some of these styles of thinking, they can often cause a great deal of emotional distress. So I'm not going to focus on what the unhelpful thinking styles are now, but just look at instead a technique that we might use to actually challenge some of these thoughts. So I know we've got enough acronyms in the NHS already, but this one might be quite helpful. So the think technique can be a really helpful way of just remembering how you can challenge some of your thoughts. So a good starting point for challenging thoughts is actually creating a bit of a thought diary. So if you're noticing you're having lots of negative thoughts, maybe over the course of the week, try recording some of these. Then what you might like to do is afterwards, after a week or so, revisit some of these thoughts. Maybe just pick one of these thoughts. Often we try to say pick one of those thoughts we call a hot thought. So that thought that packs the most emotional punch, the one that really makes you, if you think it makes you feel really bad, and try applying some of these questions to that thought. So is that thought 100% true? If not, what are the facts? What is the opinion? So actually, if you've got the thought, I'm useless at everything, is that 100% true? Actually, what facts do I have to back that up? And actually, what facts do I have to maybe challenge that? Is that thought helpful? Is thinking that actually useful to me or other people? Is that thought inspiring? Or does it actually have the opposite effect? Is it necessary? Is it actually important for me to give time to that thought? And is it kind? If not, what would be a kinder thought? So then we can actually applying this technique, start to challenge these thoughts. And it's not an overnight fix, as with everything. It's a gradual process and involves building new neural pathways in the brain as you're starting to actually divert from your usual automatic thinking styles. But as we get used to challenging these thoughts, we can build a new perspective and create more balanced thoughts over time. It's really important if we're kind of coming up with new thoughts that we make sure the new thoughts are believable. So, you know, there's no point going from I feel useless at everything or I'm useless at everything to I'm amazing at everything, because it's quite likely you won't actually believe that thought if you're so used to having that really harsh critical thought. So it might a more believable thought, which is more balanced as a starting point, might be, well, on the one hand, I have the thought that I'm useless at everything, but on the other hand, my colleagues tell me that I'm really good at coming up with new ideas for the team, and therefore I think I have some strengths too. You know, it's about making sure that you're gradually actually adjusting that thought to make it you still believe it, but it's not quite as critical or negative as before. And over time, when you notice you're engaging in negative thinking, you may be able to challenge thoughts more easily in the moment using this technique. So some tips to try out as we kind of finish up. So remember to pace yourself. Slowly try to increase your activities. Don't look too far ahead. Sometimes, you know, you can think, well, I want to be able to achieve all of this in a month, or even in my day, I want to do all of these things. I've got all of this to do. Sometimes actually thinking, what do I actually have to do next? What's my next step for the day is far more manageable. Build up tolerance. So try doing something that challenges you every day or every few days, or for example, going for a walk somewhere that you've been avoiding. Routine. So think about creating a new daily routine that prioritizes looking after yourself, like taking time out to read more or watch movies. Move a little more. So starting a little exercise routine. Building accountability, I think, is really important. Because, you know, we might feel okay to do this for the first couple of weeks or first week or first few days, but, you know, then it gets to the point, oh, can't really be bothered, you know, and you're kind of giving in a bit to how you're feeling internally. So think about, how are you going to keep yourself accountable? It might be, for instance, sharing with a friend what your plan is, and just they can keep you on track, or It might be every week you kind of have like a check-in with yourself, and you use that time to think, what have I done this week? What do I, and you use that to build in accountability. Gently question some of your thoughts. So try to keep a thought diary and revisit some of your thoughts and question with the think technique. Talk, maybe speak to your workplace about worries, or just talk in general about how you're feeling with friends and loved ones. Spend time outside. So as I've said, so much research on the benefits of nature and mental health. Relax, so try relaxation activity. So something called progressive muscle relaxation can be a really good way to unwind in the evening. Perspective, so try and rest and view this as a new, if unusual, experience that might have its benefits. Kind of view it as a bit of an experiment. And just to leave you with, really, if you're thinking, okay, I don't really know what my starting point is, what you might like to do is use this mood staircase. So firstly, if you rate your mood from 0 to 10 on the mood staircase, so 0 is the worst you've ever felt, 10 is the best you've ever felt, identify some small things you could do to move up just one step. So say if you're a 2, what one thing could you take from this presentation today, this workshop, to move you up to a 3? And then try those out for the next few days. Rate your mood, see how that changes, and then you can kind of repeat the cycle. So that might be good. Just think about today, what's one thing you can take away from it? So thank you, everyone, for staying with this workshop. I hope that's been of some benefit to you. I know we're just kind of a bit of reflection to leave you with. I know we're into February now, but we often have this pressure on ourselves to think we need to be more this, be more that, change ourselves. We want to get really super fit, we want to be eating really healthy, we want to do all of these things. But actually, sometimes, you're okay as you are, and it can just be about learning to appreciate the things you do, what you are achieving. So be kinder to yourself and appreciate your achievements. So maybe that's something to think about. But yeah, thank you all very much for that today. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Julia.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Beverly. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we get a set of slides to hand out?
Yeah, I can. If I send them on to you, Bev, if you're able to distribute them, yeah, I'm happy to share them for everyone.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. Yeah, no problem. I'll make sure I'll send the slides.
Yeah, you're getting an overwhelming. Well, it's good.
Yeah, good. Please.
Very good. Very good. I enjoyed it.
Oh, I'm glad. Yeah, I'll send the slides over to you then.
All right. Thank you
Yeah,
again.
and then will that be uploaded somewhere then?
Yeah, of course, because I've got to.
Oh, yeah.
Stop recording.